Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Kitchen. And this one was made possible by the Buster Keaton Convention. So a huge shout out of thanks to all of them. And today I am with his great granddaughter, Keaton Talmadge. So welcome.
Hello. Hi. Nice to be here.
It's so nice to be here. And I want to talk a little about Buster, and then we'll make the item, which we'll talk about too, and then we'll do more of a talk about Buster.
Sounds good.
I'm so excited because I love him. I always have this question. How did you first realize that you are related directly to probably one of the greatest artists in film history? Like, when did that hit?
It's funny because growing up, it wasn't, there was no internet, no, nothing that really, so his films and everything was very much kind of in the past. And there wasn't any DVDs even or anything. So I didn't see any of them until much later. And so it was always just talked about like, oh, your great grandfather was a very funny comedian and, he was very talented physically. And, my dad would share stories of going over to his house and the train sets that they would set up and little like, playing bridge with him and stuff like that. But it didn't really hit until I went to college and I went to art school. I'm an actor. And so I went to Cal Arts and we had a film history class that I had to take. And the first day of film history class, the professor showed a clip of the general. And he was like, does anyone here in the audience know who this comedic genius is? And I was like, that's great Grandpa Buster. And it kind of dawned on me then that for my film history class to be, this was very first day and he was talking about how, this man is responsible for so much that has come after him. That's when it really dawned on me that he was more than just your average silent comedian.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I was just up in San Francisco recently. I go to the San Francisco Silent Film Festival every year, which is like
Nice.
the Rolls Royce of silent film going, basically. And they fly in orchestras from around the world. They have incredible prints, and they just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Three Ages.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to see a gorgeous print of that on the big screen with live music.
Nice.
It was absolutely phenomenal, which leads us kind of into the recipe for today, because the Buster Keaton Convention, they sent me several options. One of them was chop suey. Another
Mm-hmm.
one was lobster, which those
Yeah, the lobster thermidor. I feel like my aunt has like talked about that's something that he used to make.
that's kind of above my pay grade. But then,
Me too.
which I told them that I was very honest. But then they sent me something that I really thought was perfect. It's called the Frozen Face Frappe, because apparently there's a magazine where it was for exhibitors of movies, talking to them about ways they can promote films and
Mm-hmm.
cross tie-ins, promotional stuff, etc. And there was an article which I printed part of out, worked many angles to help Three Ages. And
Ah.
it talks about how this one theater in Georgia was trying to stir up business, and they got all the local soda fountains to make a Buster Keaton frozen face frappe, which
That's
try to say
so
that like three
fun. Yeah, frozen face frappe. I love it.
face frappe. It's basically an orangeade frapped with a sprig of mint and served with a cherry. And this kind of sent me down a rabbit hole, because I was like, okay, an orangeade, how did that get started? And I
Mm.
looked into the company Orange Julius, because being a kid of the 80s, Orange
Oh,
Julius,
totally.
that was the thing at the mall.
Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about them in forever. That's so funny. We
But
yeah,
when
we would totally go and get Orange Julius.
But when I thought about it, it turns out I went down this whole orange aid rabbit hole. Like, if you looked at my
Hmm.
Google searches right now, it's like 50 billion orange aid recipes. But the thing is, the Orange Julius did not officially become invented till 1926. So, and Three
Okay.
Ages was 1923. So, as usual, Buster is a forerunner even in the food department, I think we can say. And there's so many ways to make it. And you know what I noticed is a lot of them involve 1 to 2 cups of sugar.
Oh,
And
wow.
right. And they made enough for like a ton of people. And I thought, well, I'm just cooking for one. So after scouring a gazillion recipes, I finally hit on what I think is going to be the right one. Fingers crossed.
Hmm.
And my apartment is also the same year as the Three Ages. It is from 1923, which
Nice.
means, which I love, but the circuitry cannot handle the blender. So once I put everything in here, I'm going to have to take a quick minute to go across the room to the other outlet. This is kind of a Keaton-esque thing, to be honest.
Totally.
Actually handle the circuitry. But
Make
the
sure you fall on the way over there and like splash everything and then
right one episode I was doing, I started this project, this Hollywood kitchen project during lockdown, actually. And I was doing an episode and my light fell over and the light bulb smashed into a billion pieces over the floor and broken glass all over the floor. And yeah, so I've had more than a few comments.
Oh no.
Yes. So what we're gonna do, I always like fresh oranges as opposed to, the orange juice that you buy in the stores. So I've got a peeled orange right here, which I'm gonna put in the blender. I've got 1 tablespoon of orange zest,
Hmm.
which I will add. 1/3 cup of milk. Then I've got about roughly 2/3 cups of ice. Wow, it's already starting to melt because it's really hot in here.
So hot.
I only have air conditioning in my bedroom and that's it. So it's rough.
I feel
Okay.
you. I feel you.
And then about 1 tablespoon of honey. So I'm going to put all these.
Mm.
Well, this honey may take a while.
You're gonna need the little spatula.
It reminded me of the Buster short, I think, where he's in the bank and he gets the molasses all over the.
Oh, that's right. And it's like, and then just everywhere he puts it, it sticks something else to it.
Yes. Oh my, I feel that so intensely.
I
Okay.
feel like I feel like they pulled a lot of cartoons from that because I feel like I've seen like you know, different animated cartoons that my kids have watched, and I'm like, that's pulled from Buster.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so I will be right back. Give me just a few moments to go and
Okay.
put this in the blender. Okay, I am back now with the officially blended frappe. So I'm going to put it in a nice tall glass. One of the reasons I also chose this is because it's summer, it's burning hot. And plus, I thought this would be a fun recipe that Buster fans could also make too if they see this episode. So it's kind of
Hmm.
something people can kind of engage in. So I've got the orange frappe, and as it says in the article, top with a sprig of mint and a cherry. So there we go.
Ah, yay!
I'm going to drink to Buster.
Yay! That
Mm,
looks good. I'm gonna have to make that.
oh my God, this is good. And no, very little sugar. I just use honey in it.
Yeah, I like the honey instead of sugar in there.
Yes. Oh, wow. This is good. I get why this was successful. Actually, it says in this little article too that the frappe really helped kind of get people into theaters. It was kind of a big promotional thing they did with all these soda shops. And the article talks about how business was really good for the movie. So I like that they kind of they did tie-ins even in 1923.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was all about marketing even then.
Absolutely. So I first discovered Buster when I was in college, and there was even a Buster Keaton Film Festival in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I went to school in Santa Fe, and
Mhm.
I drove down to see it. So getting to see him and discover him for the first time on a big screen was just because I mean he's great on DVD or television, of course, too, but the
Sure.
screen is really the necessary way to see his work.
I love my favorite part of seeing him in the theater is always the live accompaniment, whether it's the organ or just even just a piano or I've seen it with full orchestration. And that to me is brings the magic because the music plays such a huge part in the without without any they're called silent pictures but they're so not silent. The music plays such a huge role. It's almost like this third character in it.
And it's fascinating in your family because Buster was born into vaudeville.
Hmm.
So both of his parents, right, were
Yep.
vaudevillians.
Hmm.
And so he was born into the family business. And then I believe Arbuckle was a very early supporter of Keaton. And I love the two, or not the two, the many short films they made together because they were such a funny comedy team, the two of
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah, they were perfect together, just their size differential. And then I think that Roscoe taught him, he credits Roscoe in, teaching him film and the art of because there's a difference between being on stage coming as a theater actor. There's a huge difference being on stage and doing a gag for a huge audience, that's all out in front of you in this sort of fourth wall, and then transitioning those gags to film where it's just all about now where this camera is, and you can change that camera angle and have a completely different gag. And I think that Roscoe really helped him with that transition. It's still the same comedy, it's the same gags, it's the same sense of humor, but it's how you transition that from a vaudeville theater audience to now a film audience. And I think that that's what really he got really excited about, was now he had this whole new avenue to make comedy depending on where he placed that camera.
one of the only photos I've ever seen of Buster just grinning with a smile was when he's standing next to Arbuckle.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
seems that they really brought out like the best in each other as comedians.
Yeah, I think they were really close friends. He was a huge supporter of him, and yeah, I mean, I think that it's that was they were a big part of each other's lives.
And then your so okay, so there's Buster's parents, and then Buster and his wife Natalie Talmadge.
Hmm.
And then was your dad one of or your grandfather one of Buster? Explain to me kind of the family tree a little bit.
Sure, sure. So Buster's first son, James, it was Joseph Francis Keaton Jr., but he ended up going by James and Jim. Um, so he's my grandpa. And then him and Barbara Talmadge, who's my grandma, they had four kids, and my dad was the second. No, yeah, second, because I think then Melissa, and then my uncle Mark. Um, so yeah, my dad was the second child. So it goes me, my dad, my grandpa, and then Buster.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're in the business too. So you're basically what, a fourth generation person to work in the business?
I mean, it skipped a bit. I know that my grandpa, he didn't want to be an actor. He was a photographer, an on-set photographer for MGM. So I think that Buster helped get him, when he was working at MGM, helped get him work. And so he did still photography for MGM. So we have, pictures of him and Marilyn Monroe. We have pictures that he took of Rita Hayworth and Elvis, and some really, really cool
I think that counts.
photographs. But he didn't, he sort of saw more of the downside to the industry in terms of how much energy it takes from a parent away from their family, and sort of what it did to, not only Buster, but his mom Natalie, her sisters Norma and Constance. It was very difficult time frame moving from silence to talkies, and not everyone did. And then it became this, I can only imagine as an actor, like if I go a couple of years without acting, I get itchy. I just like, it's a passion that sort of lives in you that you have to keep creating. And I feel like that's how Buster was very much, even through the MGM thing, and then later on in life, like he was still finding ways to contribute, still doing commercials, still, you know, writing gags for Lucille Ball, like all that kind of stuff. You find ways to keep creating, keep that creativity going. And I think that my grandpa saw the sort of that really rough patch, and so was not really a supporter of the industry as a career path. Was like, it's only trouble, going down that path. So they didn't really support it for their kids. my uncle Jimmy would have been a fantastic character actor. He loved comedy, he was so funny, and wanted to study acting, but they just didn't really support it. They were like, it's trouble, it's difficult, it's not a good path. Do something that's more reliable, that's more stable. Um, and then my dad's they none and then so then when I came along as a granddaughter, um, we all know that grandparents treat, their grandkids differently than their kids.
Oh yeah.
So when I came along in a very early age, was interested in acting, was doing it, from elementary school, joined choir, joined drama. They were very supportive of me. So it sort of had to skip that generation for then everyone to be on board with supporting it as a career path.
It makes sense though, because I think those of us who maybe grew up way outside the industry and other cities, states, etc., it's always just sounded like the most glamorous, exciting, fun thing in the world. But yeah, there's a whole other reality that kind of plays out behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I did an episode last year with Tyrone Power's grandson, TK Power,
Nice.
and he looks just like him. It was he had zero interest in show business. And because of his looks, I mean, modeling has definitely thrown itself at him, but
Mm-hmm.
he's really not interested in being an actor. He said his grandfather accomplished so much that he just wants to do something else. And I think
Mm-hmm.
there's total validity too to saying, hey, I'm going to carve my own path and be my own person and just go in a totally different
Yeah.
direction too.
Yeah. I mean, my brother and sister have no interest in acting. They, it was never like part of their path. Um, I think that, it's either born in you or it's not. And I feel grateful that, I have such a little overarching guide that I can turn to and watch. And it's really neat, especially now that I do voice acting. Because I did a lot of theater, musical theater growing up, and then some on camera. Took a bunch of time off to have my boys, my kids, and then got into voice acting probably like, oh, it's been 5 or 6 years now. And then that just, it was like, oh, this is your path. Like you found it. And so I love that, I always say now that I get to use the voices he never did, because that's all I do is talk. And he did all the not talking. So he had to use physicality to express his comedy, and I have to use my voice and breath to express comedy.
It's kind of a perfect bookend though, in a lot of
I think
ways.
so. I think so.
So what are your favorite Keaton films?
Um, well, in terms of the short films, we're big fans of One Week here in our house. I mean, my boys they laugh so hard every time him in the chimney trying to get up the house. Like it just, I could watch it again and again, and it makes me laugh every time. We also love Neighbors, and they love The Goat, Scarecrow. Like the shorts are really fun. In terms of features, I love Steamboat Bill. I always have. That was the first of his features that I ever saw when it finally like came out on DVD and we all like watched it. Um, and so it just remains like the physical comedy that he achieves in that is it's one of those where you have to rewind it and you're trying to figure out how he did that. How does he step on that rope and like twist himself around and then end up back down? You try to like watch it in slow motion to figure it out. I just love it.
Definitely. And I feel so fortunate. I've gotten to see most of his feature films on the big screen. It's hard to pick a favorite, but if I was really hard pressed, I would say Seven Chances.
Mm-hmm.
Because I absolutely, something about that film is just hysterical.
Yeah.
And I know that kind of story has probably been done a million times since, where the young man has to get married in 24 hours or he doesn't get the inheritance or whatever.
Right.
But the scene where all the women are just chasing him and then he faces the avalanche of boulders
It's
versus,
the boulders, right?
and then
Yeah.
he chooses the boulders. And my nephew's 11, and I've tried to show him a lot of different silent film artists. And Buster's the one that's made the biggest hit. And I showed him Seven Chances. And it's just his physical comedy there's just no equal. And
Hmm.
I told my nephew, I said, they didn't have computers back then. He
Yeah.
was the special effect. No digital needed. Buster was it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it's just the magic of editing in the camera and him putting himself through the ringer to get it. And the rules that he had of like not, they never cut a take until he said so. So they just had to keep filming and hope that he was going to be okay. Which you would just never do now. Like that would just never happen in Hollywood these days.
Right. And I've even seen situations where they sorry, I've even seen screenings where he'll do a stunt and the whole audience just gasps, or they're just like like that. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
it's impressive 100 years later when
Yeah.
people gasp at something you do because it's so daring and it's so shocking and it's so unique too.
Right. Well, and you know that it's not a stunt man and it's not like there's some wire, does some like wire work and like certain things, but most of the time it's just him and his acrobatic skill.
And I forget what film it is off the top of my head, but there was one where the water spigot comes out and he
Hmm.
actually broke his neck.
Yes.
I don't know
Yep.
why I'm blinking on the movie, but I know you guys watching will all know it. It's so shocking that did not kill him. Like,
Yeah.
it's just astounding.
Well, and that he didn't even, that they kept shooting, that they kept going. And it wasn't until years later that, a doctor was like, "Did you break your neck at some point?" And he's like, "Probably."
These things happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I love how he apparently, from what I talked to Melissa Cox Talmadge a long time ago, apparently he was so good with like engineering too and gadgetry and
Hmm.
all these innovative techniques. She told me the story about how when she was little they would go to his house and he had a train set that went from his backyard all the way into where they were eating, and then
Yep.
put like a hot dog on a train car and send it out, and then the soda pop and a watermelon and those sort
Hmm.
of things.
Yeah, it would go out to the pool. So he would, it was their house in Woodland Hills, and he would go from the kitchen, and he had the little track built, and it would go out to the pool, and the kids would take off their snacks, and then it would circle back around to the kitchen. Well, you can see in, I think it's the Scarecrow where they, all of the, where he has the table set up with the, all the little like pulley systems and the salt and the beer opener and, you
Yeah.
know, that's all him. That's creating these sort of Rube Goldberg machines. He loved to tinker and like figure out how he could do something and then find the humor in it, find the comedy. It's not necessarily just the gadget, it's how can this gadget be funny.
Years ago, there was a French steward who was in the sitcom Third Rock from the Sun.
Mhm.
His wife wrote a whole play called Stoneface about the life of Buster Keaton. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah, I saw it when it premiered at Sacred Fools Theater in LA.
I was there
And
too. I was there
yay,
overnight.
yay.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I was it's so great just to see it. And now that it's actually been published by Samuel French. So now anyone can go and purchase it and, perform that a scene from it or perform the whole play. And so I love that more theater kids and students will be in small theaters all around will be able to do this play and learn about his story because that's what it's all about is continuing to keep the next generation informed and knowledgeable about him so that his legacy keeps going on, which I feel like it's stronger than ever. Like when I grew up, no one knew who he was. They knew Chaplin just because of, he was like the one in the history books. Um, but now I feel like more and more people know Keaton because of the internet and because everything's so readily available now to watch, and there's so many more live events and silent film festivals, and so there's just so much more opportunity to easily share information about someone and look it up than there was before.
Yes. And several years ago, there was a documentary, and they even had a lot of modern stars talking about the influence of Buster on Spider-Man. They had I think it was Johnny Knoxville from the
Yep.
Jackass movies talk about, which I personally would not have connected the Jackass movies to be inspired by Buster, but maybe that's me. But it was cool to see some modern day person say, hey, this started long before me.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons that I love silent film so much, as the silent filmmakers and artists, they were laying the foundation of everything else that would come
Hmm.
after. And it's just really incredible that they were so innovative, and that innovation and that spark of creativity is still with us today. It just maybe takes
Hmm.
on different faces or technology or things, but I think they had such an originality to their work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can, I love like some of the compilations that get made on, these days on the internet, and you can see, side by side comparisons of like a Buster film and then a Jackie Chan film, and you see the same gag, or a Wes Anderson film, or, things like that. And you can see you can see the influence, you can see the inspiration that came from them.
Absolutely. As far as lesser known Buster features, I was thinking, I think the Three Ages, I think now it's getting screened a lot more because it's the 100th anniversary. But I
Mhm.
think for a while that one wasn't shown as much because, at
Yeah.
least in LA for a long time, I always remember seeing that Steamboat Bill and the General were
Hmm.
screened so much. And not that they're
Hmm.
not brilliant films, but the Three Ages, I always felt that never got enough love.
Hmm.
So I'm kind of glad to see it getting a little more attention this year because of the centennial.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that that's, people always have their favorite that they want to share first with somebody, and I think that Three Ages isn't necessarily that like first recommendation, but it's a solid standalone, and it's great for people that have maybe seen one film or a short or something to now have access to go see it because there's a bunch of funny moments in it.
Butler is really funny too.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Oh my God, that's another gem that I just don't think has
Uh-huh.
gotten its due, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, that one cracks me up too.
And the cameraman, that's also brilliant.
I love the cameraman. I'm a huge fan, and that one I feel like gets some play out here. I've definitely seen that one a few times live.
And I feel like Buster, I know he had such a rough time when sound came in, and his life kind of had a lot of ups and downs, but he was like a phoenix that rose from the ashes. Like, in spite of all these hardships that he faced in his life, he kept going. He didn't give up. He kept
Hmm.
pursuing. And I think at the end, he was honored in France. Like, he kind of lived to get to see himself rediscovered and appreciated by a whole new generation.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that, that makes it so special is that, a lot of people focus on the second act or the decline, and but they don't pay as much attention to that third act, that, when he met Eleanor. And, I think it was a lot of her that really transformed him. And I got to meet her. She came to Cal Arts and like saw one of my plays. She's just such a delightful, like honest, authentic, loving person. And I think that her influence just really helped to transform him. And I'm sure it was a lot of her influence that was like, it's okay to go back now and do these things. Yes, you're maybe not the front runner as you were in the 20s, but like you can still do, a lot of these things. You can still contribute to this art form and still make people laugh. Because I think that that's ultimately that was his main goal in life, was like, how can I make people laugh?
Oh, that's so awesome. And I love that even today, little kids are discovering him. At the San Francisco Silent Film Festival a few years ago, they showed a Buster film, and this little boy was all dressed up in vintage. And his
Aww.
mother was like 8 or 9 months pregnant, and they were sitting near me. And I wound up chatting with them. And the mom said she drove over an hour to take her son to this, even though
Oh,
she
it's
was
so
heavily pregnant
cute.
with this little kid also, because she said her son loved him so much. And I go, you get parent of the year for this. And just to hear a little kid laugh at Buster, I think there is no
Mhm.
greater like thing.
Oh,
And
my boys love him. We would have Sunday. I mean, we have now watched through everything, but but for a while there, we were having Sunday Buster. It was Buster Sunday, and so they would pick a film or a short, and we would watch it on Sundays and have popcorn. And, they would kind of rank it like with their favorites. Was it above this or below that one? Or what was their, favorite gag or moment or character? They recognize, a lot of the actors that he would reuse in his films. They'd be like, "Oh, that's the guy from that film," and but it's mainly just the laughter. It's been 100 years, and they're cracking up at it more than they laugh at the cartoons that they watch.
Because I think that there are some artists that are of their time, and
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. And I think there's some that absolutely transcend time. And I would say Buster 100% transcends time.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I think it also helps that, there are some, moments in certain films where you're like, it gives you a chance to have conversations where you're like, okay, well, this isn't done anymore, and this is why, and various things, but the physical comedy, the expression, not through jokes and witty banter, but through physicality. I think that that's the main thing that is still so funny these days. Because I don't think that physical comedy ever goes away. I think it's
It,
always funny.
it doesn't. And yeah, it's never not funny. Like it's always hysterical. It's
Mm-hmm.
always absolutely worth watching in any format, be it your television, TCM, the big screen, which I
Mm-hmm.
still, it's my favorite way to see these. But yeah, and you could just always feel this energy with the audience. It's almost like, well, I mean, movie going into theater is a communal experience that
Mm-hmm.
I cherish. And it's just fun to be in a room filled with people laughing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just glorious. Like a lot of times when I'm at those kind of events, I always hope that these stars are in heaven looking down, going, all right, I did it. I'm still around, still making them laugh. Like I always hope that that's the case.
Right? I know. I know. I mean, knowing Buster, he would be like, I should have done that take just a slight bit faster, or I should have angled that, like he would be the more critical, like, like tweak that just a little bit. But I think that's what also made him so brilliant is that he was very, particular about everything and making sure it was perfect.
He's tweaking the film from heaven.
Yes, I think so. I think he would be. I think he would be.
Definitely. So do your children want to grow up to be in the business, or are they kind of not?
No, no, they're not interested in acting. I mean, I have that's my booth behind me. And every now and then, an audition will come through for a commercial or something that needs a young boy. And my agents will be like, "Oh, you can have, one of your sons audition." And they've done a couple of like little commercials and stuff, but they don't have interest in going to an acting class or theater camp or anything like that. So, which is fine. You've got to want to love it. I'm not gonna force anyone into this career. It's,
When a lot of people run into trouble is when their parents just push them into something and they don't like it or want to do it, and then they're
mm-hmm.
shoved into it, and then they start to really resent it. And I think that creates definitely some difficult situations.
Yeah, there's too much rejection in this business to not have the like. I mean, you have to have so much passion to, want to do it to combat all of that, all of the negativity that kind of comes at you on the daily. So yeah, I mean, they love watching it. They love listening for mommy on, on their video games, or, commercial come on the radio and they'll be like, "Is that you?" And they'll critique me. They'll critique me on things, which is very cute. So I'm like, maybe they'll be directors one day.
The guy's critical eye.
Hmm.
Do you ever look in the mirror and kind of see his eyes or his
Well, yeah,
face?
there, yeah. I mean, I have makeup on, so it's way more obvious when I first wake up in the morning, and because I have his dark circles and his big eyes, and that's the main thing when I meet people who have studied him or seen a lot of his films. They immediately are like, "You have his eyes." Like, and that's, one of the things that I used to do growing up was, I would fall down a flight of steps. That was my sort of like party trick, because I could just fall down, and then everyone would be like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I would just pop up and be like, "Hey."
My genetic birthright.
So yeah, I mean, and at that time, I wasn't really relating that to him. That was just something that I thought was funny and that I like to do. So now I'm like, oh, well, now I know where that came from.
I've been very lucky. I've gotten to interview and talk to quite a number of kids, children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren of my
Hmm.
favorite classic stars. And it is kind of amazing how genetics can skip a generation and land right on that person.
Yeah.
It's almost a little eerie from time to time. I'll be like, I kind of have these out of body moments. I'm like, oh my God, am I talking to the person?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I know. It's a riot.
Do you have any Buster memorabilia or photos in your home or posters or anything like that around?
We do. We do. We have, I mean, I have you can kind of see it right there. That's the plaque. That's the photo of the plaque that's on the corner by where his studios were. So I have that. We have that hanging up. We have an old picture of him, like an old black and white that's up on the wall. We have a Smirnoff ad that he did where he's got like guns and holsters and it's like, don't shoot, Buster, that vodka's made with Smirnoff, or something. We have that like print ad up. Um, we have what do we have? We've got a few different things here and there that are around. I've got a couple of things of Norma's too. I have a silver fox stole that I don't know what to do with. So
You
if
know what?
anyone,
This is just a thought, but an ex of mine, his mother had given me a fur coat, and I didn't feel comfortable wearing fur. I mean, I would not
oh
be mean to someone who chose it, but it's not my thing.
yeah,
And I finally said to him, "Do you mind if I find a charity or something?" And I found this place. I'm not sure if they survived the pandemic, but it was called Cuddle Coats, where you have to pay to ship the fur, but they use it to help abused or abandoned animals kind of
oh I have heard of that. Yeah,
and I thought, oh my God, what a great way to use that fur to kind of go back toward an animal, but this time helping them and not killing them. And
right.
I don't know, I felt like a really good way for me to do something with that. But I understand if people want to hang on to it. I mean, it's obviously a sentimental thing from a film history.
That's the thing, I would totally donate it to something like that, but it's monogrammed with her initials on the inside, and I'm like, maybe like it needs to be kept for some sort of film historian purpose, but
Definitely.
it's just sitting in a closet because I will never wear it. But we do have her backgammon set, and we do play with that. That we taught the boys how to play backgammon on that, so that was nice.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, it's been delightful chatting with you. And
Yes,
I know you're probably very busy, so thank you so much for your time.
of course, anytime. I anything for the Buster Keaton Society. I love all of them. They know way more about Buster than I do. I ask them questions about things, and they're such a delightful group and community. So I'm happy, and I was at the convention a couple years ago, right before the pandemic. I guess it's been more than a couple now. Um, but it's such a lovely time. And have you been to the convention?
I haven't been to the actual convention, no, but I'd love to go someday for sure.
Yeah, it's a blast. I encourage anyone who's a Buster Keaton fan to go. There's so many great talks. It's just fun to be in the area and the tours, and to go see the Actors Colony, and all the fun memorabilia they have around there. It's kind of magic.
One time I was on my way to a silent film event and it was a Buster screening. And I had a friend in the car with me, and this is before GPS, and we got lost. And I'm like, oh, I don't know where we're supposed to turn. And then we see this car in front of me that pulls in front of me, and the license plate says damn fino. And
Oh,
she goes, follow that car. They know what they're doing. And I'm like, she's right. So I like damn fino car. And sure enough, I found parking and I found the screening. So
perfect. I love that. Yeah.
Buster would have appreciated that as well.
Yeah, I have the Dan Fino t-shirt, and every time I wear it, I get compliments from people. It's a good one.
I just love him so much. He truly was and is one of the greatest, most innovative artists in the history of film.
I agree. I agree. And hopefully he continues to be as we keep sharing him with the next generation.
I think that's important because I really do think like 50 years from now, 100 years from now, people are still going to show his films. It may be in a totally different format that has not been dreamed
Right?
yet.
Right, just on our glasses or things.
In the cloud,
Hmm.
who knows?
Up in the cloud.
But well, thank you so much, Keaton. This has been an absolute delight to chat with you.
Yeah, you too. And I'm looking forward to making myself a little orange frappe.
This is actually very tasty. It's very refreshing. And like I said, I skipped all the sugar and I don't miss it. It still tastes great.
No, that sounds perfect.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of Hollywood Kitchen. Please stay tuned for more food, fun, and film history. And again, thank you to everybody at the Buster Keaton Convention for making this possible.